When people are hungry, everything else kind of goes out the window. They don't hear all of the stuff that you're trying to put into them.
You're not just feeding folks, like you're feeding hope.
Our connecting was something, wasn't it?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to JTrent Connect today. And this is kind of part 2 in a little mini series that I'm doing with Haywood Pathways Center in Western North Carolina. And we have the pleasure today of meeting with Neil Ravenna, AKA the chef. And Neil and I have been talking a little bit, and he knows I have a great affiliation, or I should say, I couldn't even think of the word, but a great respect for chefs in general. I've been in the food business a little bit, and just most chefs are just colorful, but they're kind, and there's just a lot of attributes that I love about it. It seems to be a thread woven in all chefs. So Neil, welcome to us today. Welcome for being here. And as we were talking, one of the things we talked a little bit about your role in Haywood Pathways and what you do, and I just want maybe you expound. You're not just feeding folks, like you're feeding hope. And yes, so talk a little bit to that.
What's interesting is what we do is when people are hungry, everything else kind of goes out the window. A good example of, we have a food truck that we take out into the community. We feed about 100 people a day, and it's absolutely free. It's nothing. We create the meals. I have a staff that goes out, cooks it, and feeds people for nothing, if you will. And we have been asked to let organizations come and preach or talk to the people that are in line coming to our truck. And we kind of told them no, because when somebody is hungry, they don't hear all of the stuff that you're trying to put into them.
That's a lot of rhythm in that. I like that.
Right. And so I asked different churches and pastors to wait until people have eaten. And then they're going to have, because the people that come to the truck, you don't know if they've eaten today. You don't know if they ate yesterday. You don't know. So we're a source of comfort out there to the folks that need the food. And it's not just the homeless population. Our food truck feeds anybody, no questions asked, that come to the food truck. And we do lunch and dinner Monday through Friday out in different parts of the county. And you can see where we are on our Facebook page or anything like that. But we try to make it a situation that somebody can come just for an hour and take a breath and get some decent food and gather their thoughts and go on. There's some people that just come in, they get a hamburger and they turn around and walk away. But then there's folks that you can see need what we have. And on the food truck, we also, depending on the time of year, we pack the food truck not only with food and snacks, but we'll do gloves and socks and jackets and hats in the wintertime and pass those out. And they're all donated here to Pathways. We do toiletry kits. Anything we get an abundance of, we can turn around and take it out on this food truck and pass it out to people.
That's amazing.
And I'll tell you a little story. We have a large generator on the back of the truck, which is pretty noisy. And we were doing lunches and dinners in a church parking lot. And next to the church was an apartment building who, rightfully so, they said it was kind of loud, and was there anything that we could do about it? And the church put in a power pole for us so that we can plug in and not use the generator, so it's quiet in the neighborhood, because we don't want to upset our neighbors or anything like that. We just want to come in and feed people and leave without leaving anything behind, if you will.
That's a great one.
In order for us to plug the truck in, we needed a certain size outlet. So I met the electricians down at this church, and the electricians were telling me what they were going to do and how they were going to do it. And the electrician said to me, but you want to make sure you put locking boxes on these, else all the homeless people are going to be here charging their telephones. And I looked at him, and my wheels started turning, and I came back to Pathways and asked our former director for money to buy cell phone charging towers, because cell phones are a way the homeless keep in contact with one another, keep in contact with their family. It's also a sense of safety with them. And so we put cell phone chargers on the truck instead of putting a barrier up like a lock on the outlet. I'm trying to knock barriers down, and when these people
Right.
come and eat for an hour, they can plug in their phones and do all that because they don't have access to electricity or anything. So I kind of take the problems that people throw in front of us and change them radically.
I love that. That is such a great story. I was looking for opportunities on that. Well,
Right.
like, tell us a little bit about like how long you've been with Haywood Pathways and what was your kind of journey? What brought you to Haywood Pathways?
Okay, I'm gonna go back. Let's go back to the beginning.
Sure.
I was raised in Vermont, up in New England, and I have two brothers. And my dad was a state trooper, and mom was a stay-at-home mom. But my parents had a foster home, and my two brothers and I, and it was a foster home only for at-risk children.
Mm.
And my two brothers and I grew up with 18 kids. There were 21 of us that grew up together. From the time I was a very small child until, after I was married and it went on. But there were lots and lots of at-risk kids that came through the house, and our parents always taught us to help people that need help. But life comes along, you start chasing paychecks, you start chasing notoriety and that kind of thing. And I'll get into that journey in just a second. But my ride came after 40 years of working as a chef in a kitchen. I was drawn to wanting to go work for a nonprofit and wanting to feed people that needed to be fed. I was in Bryson City. Prior to this, I came to Bryson City about 10 years ago, and I was the executive chef at a fine dining restaurant and boutique hotel up there. And one day I happened to be driving through this part of Waynesville, and I just stopped at the homeless shelter to see if they needed volunteers or anything like that. And they told me that they actually needed a kitchen manager. So I gave them my resume, and we sat and we talked, and they didn't have money in the budget to pay somebody with the credentials that they were looking for. Okay. They needed somebody to be able to write grants and to do budgeting and all of that. But it was only an $11 an hour position. And they said, we won't be able to afford you doing that. But we have a lot of grants that we've written for this position that are starting to come in. So about a year later, I just came by again, just popped in to see them, and the executive director told me, she leaned back in her chair and her eyes got a little watery. She said, my kitchen manager quit this morning. So there's a reason you're standing here in front of me, and this job is yours if you would like it. And I said, I would love this job.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That only God does stuff like that. That's so cool.
And when she left a few months ago, and one of the last things she said to me was, our connecting was something, wasn't it? And I said, it really was. It really was. Only because she knew nothing about cooking, kitchen, running a restaurant and everything like that. And when she hired me, she said, all of that is taken off of my plate. I don't have to worry about it. You've done this long enough. You know what you're doing. Just let me know what you need for support. And then she turned me loose, and I, changed everything in the kitchen and brought it all up to date, got new equipment, and we're running pretty nice right now.
That's awesome. I love that story. That is so. And I know you and Julie already told it on her on her interview, but her conversation. But you were integral in getting her into the position she's in.
Julie was on a cook team that used to come. Every night we have a different cook team from a different organization. Some churches, we have legal aid that comes in to help with legal matters. With some of the residents, the hospital does food, and every night there's a different team that comes in and helps me do dinner. And Julie was on a cook team at a church, and she had come in a couple of times, and she was unlike any other volunteer that I had dealt with, only because she was asking questions. She was very inquisitive about how things worked and what we did, but it was all on the level of feeding people. I mean, it was primitive. It was, and she would ask questions that nobody else would ask. So I could see her wondering, what was going on and everything. And it was they came probably 2 or 3 times, and then we were missing our volunteer coordinator had left, and they were looking for somebody. And I got her contact information and called her. Oh, no, she actually came in one night on the cook team, and I took her out back on the loading dock, and I said, I don't know what your story is, if you work or anything like that. I said, but there's this position opening up, and I think you would be fabulous at it. And she went through the interview process, and they hired her, and then eventually made her the assistant executive director. And now she is now filling in big feet, big shoes.
Oh yeah.
A year and a half later, and she's been so wonderful for this place. It's
That
just
is awesome. So before we wrap up, I'd like you to maybe share one unexpected connection that you've had in your life, just that has made a difference.
My life.
In your life. We're gonna get personal now with you there, Neil. But like we know.
No, I have the perfect story. It happened to me. I was the executive chef at the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and the Marriott company ran the food service. So I was an executive chef for Marriott, and we had lots of accounts in Alabama, in the state of Alabama, and we were in the education division. So there were quite a few small colleges, junior colleges, and every property had a chef, that worked there. And I was called by a district manager, and I was asked to travel to Montgomery, Alabama to cook dinner for 5 people. Well, Montgomery, Alabama is 3 hours away from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And this was going to be on a Friday, which is never any good anywhere in Alabama because the roads are all full up. And I really dug my heels in and said, you have a chef down there. Why do I have to go down and make dinner for 5 people? This guy can't handle it or what? And he just said, we want you to do it, and you're going to do it. So dragging my feet, not really in a good mood about it, was just going to go down, do the meal, and leave and go home. What they had at, it was Troy State University has a campus in Montgomery. And we went down, and on Fridays at noon, the food service usually closes. Everyone goes home early, that kind of thing. I had the whole kitchen to myself, and they left me one person to help me serve the meal. And a lady came into the kitchen, and she said, one of our guests is a vegetarian. Is that going to be a problem? And I, of course, went, of course they're a vegetarian. Nope, it won't be a problem. And this is how I did this whole thing.
Yeah.
And at the end of the night, I was wiping down and cleaning up the kitchen, and there's the pass. There's heat lamps, and then there's a pass where you put the food up. There was a figure standing there, very petite woman, older woman was standing there. And she said, did you make my vegetarian dish? And I said, yes, ma'am. And she said, and you are? And I said, I'm Chef Neil Ravenna. And she put her hand out, and she said, Neil, I'm Rosa Parks. And would you come and sit and have dinner with us, or sit and have dessert with us? And I said, I would be glad to.
Oh, wow.
And I went and I sat next to her while they had dinner. Well, the 5 people were the president of the college and the chancellor, as well as the architect that was unveiling the plans for the Rosa Parks Museum and Library, which is directly across the street from the food service at Troy State. And it's a very small street, but there's the historical marker. That's where the bus stop was right across the street. And after dinner, she looked at me and she said, will you take me to my car? And I said, yes, ma'am. So she grabbed my arm and I walked her out. And this makes me a little emotional. And in front of this historic marker of where the bus station was a big black limousine. And I walked her across the street, and a gentleman opened the door, and I put her in the limousine, and then they drove off. And I stood there, teared up, cried a little, only because I was embarrassed by the way had acted to go and do this. And it was a lesson of, it doesn't matter who you're cooking for, you cook with love for everybody. And people can taste that. But to be able to sit in her presence, talk to her, bring her to the car and everything was such an impact in my life. And not being short, aggravated with anybody for what they need, whether it's a bologna sandwich or steak dinner or whatever, you do it with love, and people can feel that, and people can taste it. And just another little thing about that, it was very interesting. It was about a year ago, a cook team didn't show up, and I was out at a different property, and they called me and said, the cook team's not here, nobody's cooking dinner. So I came back and whipped together cornbread and chili, but very quickly. And the next day, one of the residents came up to me and said, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Sure, I'm fine." She said, "Well, that cornbread last night tasted like pure hate." And I went, "I appreciate you telling me that." I said, because I was doing it very quick and trying to get it done, and I was aggravated and everything. And I spent 18 years in Alabama, and I do cornbread pretty well, but I kind of threw it together. There was either too much salt or something in it. But the resident said that. And on a different time, I had a resident come, and he was scraping his plate that was dirty. And he looked at me and he said, "Not your best work, chef." Okay. I just started laughing, and I said, "I'm sorry, I'll try better." But be able to have that connection with the people that are here is wonderful for me. When I go home with a sense of fulfillment, a sense of accomplishment. Being in the restaurant field, like you said you were, I mean, you know how high stress it is and everything, but to be able to just go home and not worry about it because everybody's been taken care of is great. And all of our food is donated, so I'm a chef that doesn't have to deal with food cost. Right. My labor, the couple that I have running the food truck, their pay is done by grants, so I don't have to worry about labor cost. So I'm running this great big kitchen, not worrying about labor cost and food cost. And I work Monday through Friday, dinner, no nights, weekends, or holidays. So there's not a whole lot of chefs out there that have that benefit package. And I love coming to work every day. I love seeing the residents. They change all of the time. And I just think it's good for everybody. It's wonderful for me in my life, and I know I'm impacting people here.
Absolutely, Neil. I want to thank you so much for your time today, and
Absolutely.
amazing stories that I know our listeners are just going to connect with on so many levels. And I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure and joy. And so, if you guys are out there and in your community, whether it's Haywood County in Western North Carolina, or wherever you are, your hometown, think about dropping in and connecting with your local food shelter, your homeless shelter, your food banks, those kind of folks, because amazing opportunities to be a blessing, but then to also be blessed
and to make a difference. And all of our volunteers make a difference, and they care about what they're doing, which is a nice atmosphere to have around here.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Be blessed.